how are fossils made? Okay, consider for a moment this lovely ammonite. How did it come to be? The big deal is that remains, tracks and trails, and chemical fossils need to get buried quickly. Rapid burial helps remains escape scavengers and burrowing organisms. Fast burial also helps the remains quickly enter the burial environment, where decomposition rates are slow. This is usually someplace without abundant oxygen. In terms of fossilization, after an animal dies or leaves trace fossils, those remains move from the active zone to the historic layer. The active zone is where there's an abundance of fossil-destroying activities. For example, there might be lots of scavenging, burrowing, abundant oxygen to fuel microbial decomposition, and erosion and physical reworking of sediment. With increased burial, eventually remains that are left enter the historic layer. There, the rate of destructive processes falls dramatically. In the historic layer, burial has advanced enough that the remains are deeper than most burrowing reaches, too deep for remains to be re-exposed by erosion, and deep enough that oxygen is scarce, so most decomposition rates are very slow. In the case of body fossils, there are a couple of major modes of fossil preservation. First is simple burial. Here there is the formation of compression fossils and lithification of original skeletal remains. This can also involve amber. Amber is tree sap that soaks around things caught in it, like insects, flowers, even feathers, and excludes oxygen, making beautiful preservation. Fine-grained sediments are likely to be involved that exclude oxygen and reduce decomposition, and so preserve really beautiful detailed structure. Coarse-grained sediment, by contrast, usually allows oxygen and water to circulate enough to destroy many fossils. Permineralization is fossilization by fluids that are supersaturated in carbonate or silica. This can occur while plants are alive, for example, for vegetation growing next to springs. Permineralization is also common by burial in volcanic ash or invasion of open spaces by mineral-laden groundwater. Bones and wood are commonly permineralized. The ammonite that I presented at the beginning is partly permineralized. In this case, the open chambers became filled with honey-brown calcite, making a truly beautiful fossil. Early cementation also helps promote fossilization. Examples are reef rock and beach rock that are cemented almost as quickly as they are deposited. Cementation can occur on or just below the sea floor, particularly in carbonate sediments. Sediment is often quite porous, allowing for extensive recrystallization and destruction of the original fossils. Often, reefs are not that well preserved, owing to extensive leaching and recrystallization of the fossils, even though there's an abundance of fossils there. Mummification can also produce really nice fossils. This occurs in caves and in other arid environments where the remains are too dry to be decomposed by microbes. An example is the recent discovery of fossil human poop in an Oregon cave dated to about 12,300 years ago. This is one of the earliest records of humans in North America. Now, the environment is a big player in preservation. The best places where remains are rapidly buried, there isn't any oxygen, and there's an abundance of organisms with hard parts and fine-grained sediments. Such places include marine environments, particularly anoxic basins. Fossils also form where erosion rates are low. Note that mountaintops are bad in this respect, whereas the deep ocean or lakes are good from the standpoint of preserving fossils more or less permanently. Shallow marine areas are favorable because sedimentation rates may be high, and lots of organisms have hard parts. Lakes and river floodplains may also have rapid sedimentation rates with fine-grained mud, and so are great places to preserve terrestrial animals and plants. Now, we can make a scale of the likelihood of preservation as a function of rapid sedimentation rate, abundance of hard parts, oxygen content, fine-grained sediment, and rapid cementation. Now, in closing, I have a personal story. As a paleontologist, I sometimes think how I might maximize the likelihood that I would be preserved as a fossil. Where would I go to be preserved in the fossil record? As it happens, we know of some really beautiful human remains that have been preserved for thousands of years in peat bogs. Peat bogs exclude oxygen, and the humic acids from decaying plants preserve tissues with incredible detail. Then, of course, there's the famous Iceman, preserved in a glacier in the Italian Alps. He turns out to be about 5,300 years old from the dawn of the Copper Age. and was preserved with all manner of clothing, tools, even traces of copper in his lungs, probably because he was smelting copper ores. So, give me a peat bog or a good glacier, and off we go.